Check 1, 2. All right. Sound is working good. And hello there. Good morning. It is Thursday, March 13th. And I am Rob, that developer dad, and we're building on the DM's familiar. The other day, I started working on adding an edit component so that as the townsfolk objects get created in the DM's familiar, users can choose to give their own descriptions for things like personality and background and what the NPC does and so on and so forth, either before or after the AI has been invoked. And I'm doing this in a generic kind of non-typed way, so to speak. No, I'm not using generics. I started off with them, and I decided that it's better if I get rid of those because, well, it wasn't working. So yesterday I got the fields added to the form dynamically, of course, discovered from the actual type of object that we're looking at. And today we're going to start working on change detection. So give me a second just while I get things built and running in a browser so that we can visually see what we did yesterday. Excuse me. This time change has really taken me a long time to get used to relative to years past. I've been having a heck of a time getting out of bed in the mornings. And a heck of a time getting to sleep at night and stuff. It's just got me all discombobulated. One more second, we'll have the browser loaded. Sign in. And it's loading, and I can share my main screen. Here we are. So here's the DM's familiar. I'm sure that if you've been following me for a while, you're familiar with this site. And let's say this half vampire brewer who is retired. Let's edit them. Boop. And we've got this form come up. Here it is. You can see the different fields. And this isn't the final. This is not even my final form. But right now, I can type in these. He's spooky. But I have no idea if that change is getting picked up by the actual code. I have no idea if, well, I know it won't do anything when I hit save yet because I haven't written the code to transfer these new values into the model. But we can see the stuff, we can type in it, we can edit it, all that good stuff, but it doesn't do anything yet. So I think a good visual way of seeing that we have changes that we can make, a good first step, and we want to develop in like baby steps, is to implement some change detection. So we'll get My Buddy Copilot. Hey code, good morning. Good morning. Let's start talk about change detection on the ObjectEditorForm. Do you have any recommendations for me? I figured out how to make speech recognition work with Copilot yesterday. Now, after she finishes answering, I could push a button and just have her read out. Okay. current values with original. Here, I'll show you. She's done thinking. She's done thinking. Now, I apologize. The volume on this is a little high.
Change detection strategy for ObjectEditorForm. Looking at your current implementation, we can add change detection in a few key ways. First, let's add a property to track whether the form has changes. Add a method to detect changes by comparing current values with original. Add an original value property to your edit field class, if not already present. Modify your form fields to trigger change detection on input. Would you like me to continue with how to use this to enable/disable the save and reset buttons?
Hey, code, not yet. Hey, code. Oh, she's not listening. It's okay. I'm going to say not yet. I think we can use the underlying model, instance model, instead of the original value field on the edit field class. What do you think? Storing duplicate data, uses a source of truth, maintains cleaner state management. Get has changes does not equal value, has changes equals value. Okay. You get property values from model instance, compares current form values to actual model values, reduces memory footprint. I think the first thing we should do to create a static utility class, perhaps in one of the framework libraries, that will accept an instance of some type. It will have to be passed as object, and the property path string and the utility class will traverse the properties on the instance along the provided path, ultimately returning the value, whatever property is found. Now, while Claude thinks, I'm going to figure out where to place this. Context converters, guards, serialization wrappers, new folder, reflection. Where are you? New file, class, reflection helper. I don't like reflection helper, but object inspector. Screw it, that'll work. And let's see what they've said. I've called the class Object Inspector. By the way, all right, using system reflection. And I'm going to apply that, and then I'm going to review the code that got suggested. Especially when we get into more arcane things like reflection, it's really important that we understand what is going on. And I'm just going to scooch this all the way over so that we can see everything that we need to see. Keep changes, so object inspector, object properties and their values. For inspecting class instance properties and their values. All right, if instance is null or the property path is empty, out we get. Current instance equals instance, path parts, property path dot split on the dot, which is what we need for each part in path parts. Current instance get type get property part. Property info is null. We bail. Current instance equals property info dot get value. Current instance. We bounce. Return current instance. The property value is string. Instance property path. ToString string dot empty. This looks logical. We're going to need to test it. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. Now, this is some heavy-duty code stuff, and it is not going to work with the Blazor hot reload stuff. So, all right, that. Hey, code. That class looks reasonable, but we're going to need to test that heavily. So let's get back into the ObjectEditorForm code behind and start implementing some of those other steps in your change detection process that you've suggested. Excuse me. I'm just barely awake, guys. Okay, view property has changes. Detect changes. And then we connect the inputs over on the view. So let's incorporate these methods first. Let her go. All right, keep, undo. Oh, it's got some explodes, but that's okay. That's just a missing using. Using my reflection utility, save. Form event handlers, on cancel button click. There's still one problems. Oh, yeah. The save button visible. That's right. That's fine. We'll get that incorporated in a second. All right, so there's that. We got to pop over here to the Object Editor Form's Razor code. And why does this constantly happen? I like my HTML attribute values one line at a time because I don't have a 17-mile wide monitor. But every time I save, some add-on I installed to code just messed things up for me. There's text area, ID on bind. Bind event. We'll back max length up. There we go. Oh, duh. Come on, Rob. Head in butt. Bag case of cranial rectal impaction. There we go. Now, as soon as I save this, it's going to reformat everything. Oi, excuse me. Excuse me again. All right, so bind at on input. All right. Yeah, it won't like that. Undo. That change, actually. Hey, code. That change you suggested for the actual input elements on the Razor page isn't going to work for us because we can't use the on input binding twice in the same element. Any alternatives? On change. Hey, code. Doesn't the at bind syntax give us automated two-way property binding though? I gotta say, this dictation way of dealing with code is really, really nice. This is the first time I've actually used it in a live work scenario. Add our change detection after the property is updated by blah, 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 blah. Property value setter in the edit field class. Action on value changed. Right up, wire up the change detection. Edit mode, edit fields. Built-in property change notification triggers our change detection when values update. Maintains separation of concerns. Hey, code? Not yet, because I just had another silly thought. What happens if somebody makes some changes to the form? I gotta tell it to stop. Hey, code? What happens when somebody makes some changes to the form and then manually reverts those changes so that they're at their original values? I'd like that to actually unwind the change detection, especially if they undo all of the changes they've made. Oh, perfect. Okay. All right. So detect changes, model instance return. Okay. John to Jane, changes it back to John. Has changes will be set to false. Okay. Rather than tracking original values separately, some UI feedback to show when fields match, don't match their original values. Not yet. Okay, let's get detect changes incorporated into, where do you want to put it? Object editor form. Hey, code. I think instead of putting our detect changes and has changes and all of that stuff on the object editor form itself, why don't we put this stuff as a feature of the actual edit model itself? Stop. And event to its owner whenever has changes flips from false to true or vice versa. So what Claude's been suggesting so far has been a solid approach in that we put the change detection at the actual razor control form level. Now the form is backed by what I've called an edit model that holds all of the fields that are editable on the type of object that we're editing. If instead we embed the change detection into the edit field, of which the edit model has a collection, and whenever that edit field changes, it can, or whenever a field value changes, it can say, hey, I've changed, or I've reverted back. I have no changes from the original. And then from there, that field can tell its owning model, I have changes. The owning model can be responsible for knowing whether none, all, or some of its fields have differences from the underlying model. And then when the has changes state of the model itself flips back and forth between true and false, it can then notify its owner, in this case, the object editor form, that there are changes to be saved or reverted or whatever. Change tracking responsibility where it belongs with the edit model that manages the form data. Now, I want to make sure that our edit model actually has an instance. Great. Let's add this event handler. Actually, let's see. Oh, shoot. Go away. I want to review this code over here in the chat window before we go ahead and do it. Edit model, object instance. We're adding an event handler. Fields has changes. Okay. If the incoming has changes property is different from the backing field, we set it to the new one and invoke. Has changes changed. I'll probably change the name of this event handler because that's really awkward. Detect changes. Return has changes equals fields, any field. Original value, object inspector get property value is string. Field.property value is not equal to original value. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and apply that to the edit model. And keep. We've got a grumpy. Where's the grumpy? Where's the grumpy code? Where are you? Grumpy frown code. Okay, so there's that. It wants a reference to that reflection thing. Now, it occurs to me that while the reflection thing is cool and slick and neat and actually not terribly difficult to use, it's also going to get excessively expensive. So let's change tracking closer to the data, reduces responsibility, detect changes, build fields. Hey code, do we need to add an event handler inside edit model and then pass that to the edit field objects as we create them so that it can be notified when a particular field's had its value changed? This really is a lovely way of working, I have to say. I can't imagine using voice commands with an AI assistant in a crowded office environment where they've got that open plan and all the developers are in like their own little tiny cubes that are like half walls between them and the other 6 people that are around them. I feel like that'd get really, really distracting and really annoying really fast. But in a solo dev or somebody who works from home scenario, this is nice. This is really nice. It feels much more natural than me typing as I narrate for you guys. And we should add an event handler and event model to receive notifications when an edit field value changes, when field values are modified. Here's how we implement this. On field value changed, build fields. Property path, field.onValue changed. So let's go ahead and implement this stuff. Boop. Let's just keep all of this. And now we are going to have some Anchor code right there. Would I like to see the corresponding changes needed in the edit field class? Yes, we have some Anchor code in EditModel because Roslyn can't find that event we're trying to bind to. And so what we're doing is we're actually building up in React and front-end programming, they call this a component tree. And so what we're building in here, and this is just purely algorithm and data in this space, because we're not actually manifesting into a browser or UI type thing yet from here. But it's still very much a component tree, and we want to keep these component trees happy and little. So Bob Ross's joy of painting even applies to software. Let's keep building this happy little tree. Now, every algorithmic tree needs a friend in his UI. And we're going to put one of those little rascals in place in just a minute. I've had the conceit of wanting to become the Bob Ross of code for a long, long time. And I can feel the transformation happening now. Edit field, we've got that. We got rid of the Anchor code, so we beat the devil out of it. And let's see here. Property value, on value changed, invoke this. We're passing the edit field. Let's go back to the on field value changed. Go to definition. Groovy, detect changes, field. This is all looking really good so far, but once we start typing in the form fields, we're going to be hitting that reflection method on just about every keystroke, aren't we? And this is Blazor Server interactivity. So that's a round trip on every keystroke. Eek. Early on, you suggested keeping track of the original model property values. And I'm coming around to that. But let's put those original values into a dictionary keyed on the property path, whose value is the property value. We can build that dictionary in our EditModel constructor just after we've finished the build fields invocation. Okay, EditModel instance has changes. Original values has values changed. Yeah. I don't know if there's a two-dictionary extension method. Frequently, LMs will make stuff up. People in the field call it hallucination. I call it just making wrong guesses. Because all a large language model is, and GitHub Copilot, Claude Sonnet, ChatGPT, Gemini, all of those things, they're just fast guessers. Now, there's a ton of clever software and training around making those fast guessers really, really, really good at guessing what answers are going to satisfy the querent more than any other answers it guesses at. And there's been a lot of work done to humanize the responses that come out and everything like that. And the detractors for AI code assistants say, oh, well, it just writes garbage code and blah, 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 and it just gets stuff wrong all the time. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's what a human developer is there for, to catch those mistakes and correct it. And I've noticed that throughout a coding session, it starts to get smarter and smarter and smarter. And after about 2 hours of heavy coding, it starts to forget things because it runs out of context window, of course. So that means it's time to take a break. And then when you come back, it takes a couple of minutes to get it back into the swing of things, just like us. But then it gets back to being able to execute small coding tasks exceptionally well. And Copilot can type way faster than I can. All right, so we're caching the original values at initialization. Have I applied these yet? Let's apply them, just in case. Oh yeah, I totally did. So we're gonna save all. All right, let's review. So we've got our object instance. It's provided in the constructor. Private bool has changes. That is going to be initialized to false because false is the default value for a Boolean. We've got our original values, dictionary, string, and string. Has changes changed. And we are building these things out in our constructor. Edit fields equals build fields, fields equals edit fields. Original values equals fields.toDictionary. Get property value is string. Fields. And the reason we're two-stringing these property values is because they are all going to be pushed into fields in an HTML form where they will ultimately manifest as strings. Yeah, we've got to do some type conversion on the back end, but whatever. Has changes changed, invoke. That's right, I wanted to change this to rename handle model changed. Handle edit model changed. Yeah, don't love it, but it's better than handle changes changed. And I believe this is the event that is raised when the values in the edit fields for the edit model are different from the values in the underlying object that the edit model represents. Save. Has changes, edit model changed, invoke. Detect changes. No need to log for perf monitoring. We do need to get handle edit mode changed, delegated out to our object editor forms code behind. However, we can close the object inspector. We don't need that anymore. Excuse me. So it does want to work in the code behind right here. Edit model changed handler. Do we have a has? Yeah. Let's build that out. Keep those. Now, where's has changes? Go to definition. Here we go. Has changes. Beautiful. State has changed. All right. And that's just a bool. Form event handlers, boogity boogity boo. Looks good so far. Let's incorporate this into making the save button and reset button The save and reset buttons disabled when has changes is false, and enable them when has changes is true. Boom. Now, while Copilot thinks, I'm going to step away for a second or two. I will be right back. All right, I have returned. Okay, we'll modify the object editor form, blah, 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 blah. So, save, reset, cancel. Let's come down here, whoop, all the way to the bottom. Cancel, reset, save. BTN secondary. I'm just going to grab this little snippet because I don't want it to rewrite the order in which those buttons are rendered out to my screen. Oh, what even are you doing, Rob? There we go. Pop that here. I'm not sure that's the right syntax for setting an HTML element to be enabled or disabled. I could be wrong. But at least half of software development is fooling around and finding out. And we've just done a whole lot of fooling around. So it's time to find out. Add some CSS to style these buttons. Yes. Yes. Some visual differentiation for enabled versus disabled buttons seems wise to me. Now we do have in the UI files, inside components, common, editor form, eraser CSS. We do have a scoped CSS file for this. Go back to chat. Okay, so Claude is recommending that we override all of the existing styles and everything like that. And I really don't like that. Let's not fully replace the existing button styles in the component CSS. Instead, let's create specific new styles to govern this disabled state. Color accent light, color accent light. Yeah. Let's see how these changes look. And then, as long as the functionality is working, we can tweak the cosmetics until we're happy. Save that. And I'm going to come over to editors, rebuild. Rebuild! Verify the functionality first. So what I'm going to do is, what's the problem over here? What are you grumping about? Is save button visible is assigned, whatever. You know what? Just get rid of it. Because we're using enable disable instead of the other thing. And of course, I better rebuild the UI again. Rebuild, just to get rid of that silly problem. It's only a compiler warning, but I like to keep that stat at 0 whenever practical. Now, we're going to get things like compiler warnings and compiler errors while we're working on our code, but I always like to make sure that it's in good shape before I do like a final pull request or whatever. All right. I'm not always good about that discipline. It's more an aspirational standard than a hard, fast standard that I keep for myself. All right, so that's running. Let me reload. All right. Now, we're not using the reflection thing for change detection, but I'm not going to throw it away. All right, let's take a look at, we'll spin down to Alondra, edit. Okay. Now, reset is disabled. Save changes is disabled. I think I might just, yeah, that's one thing that I'm going to change. I don't like this cursor not allowed. I think what I'll do instead is set it to just like the regular pointer instead of the hand. So, bronze complexion, long black hair, typically wears, she is a well-toned goth elf. There we go. Now reset, doesn't do anything yet. Cancel, absolutely does. Who are we just playing with? Elf, Alondra. I believe it was Alondra. Yeah. Okay, so, cancel, edit, cancel. Okay. Our scheme. There's something else I need to test. I'm going to refresh because we do have that weird state bug. Let's take a look at Alara Voss Jr. We woke up that. And it did not go back to sleep. Reset. We'll edit Gromach. Okay, those are as they are. We've woken them up. Put the T back. And it doesn't revert. Okay, let's see what's what. Let's open up the edit mode. And let's see. All right. It looks okay. When the form loads, our reset and save buttons are in fact disabled. However, when I make a change to any of the fields, both buttons enable as expected. Then, if I change a value back, the button states are not reverting. Additionally, if I cancel the editor and come back in with a new, excuse me, with a new NPC to edit, those buttons are active. Has changes equals false. Edit model. I'm going to need to stop execution because we're going to have to rebuild to get these code changes recognized. And we are coming up on an hour. So what I'm going to do is once we've got the enabled, disabled states toggling on our reset and save changes buttons properly, I'm going to call it a successful stream. And then we'll work on actually connecting, building the logic to reset the form to its unedited, to show the unedited state of our underlying model. And then once that's working, we're going to work on applying the changes made to the form fields to that underlying model and sending it back to whatever component is in charge of managing these model instances for us. Likely because we're comparing string values and detect changes, but not handling string comparisons consistently. Let's take a look. EditModel.fields.any. Where is this being done? Yeah, detect changes. Nope. Remember, we moved responsibility for detecting changes into the edit model and its edit fields in collection members. As far as setting Blazor component level variables such as edit model, event handlers, etc., I think we should implement a teardown method and call it when a button click means we're transitioning away from the edit form. Blazor component. Teardown. Okay, we're not going to do state has changed. Okay. Looks reasonable, but let's not call state has changed in the teardown method. That's being handled by the event handler delegates back in the parent component. That feels funny. I don't know if I like it. I might live to regret this decision very, very soon. Keep. Save. This is on save button, click, model changed handler, as changes equals changes, state is changed, that should be fine. And out here on the editor form, we've got this has changes property. Okay. What's your problem? It's still dealing with some cached nonsense. Okay. Let's build and see what's what. Oh, there's something I wanted to do in here. Button disabled icon, opacity, button disabled cursor is pointer. I think pointer is the right one. Rebuild. I think. Not sure. I'm gonna ask Copilot over in Bing in a second. Here we go. Can you please show me a list of the standard values for the cursor CSS attribute and what they look like. All right, let's run. Oh, default. Pointer is the little, there, that one. I want default. Duh. It'll capture that the next time I rebuild. Let's come into edit. Okay, we know that's the pointer right now. We know it's going to revert to the little arrow thingy. Let's change Leora Blackwood to Leora Blackwoo. Those light up. All right, I want to see. Well, let's cancel. We'll load up Lunara in the editor. These are now correct. Cancel. Edit Leora. We're good. Let's view. Make sure it still behaves the same when we come in through a different path. Edit Leora Blackwoo. Cancel. Edit. Beautiful. Okay, that appears to be working the way we want it to. So we've got that restored. However, I still want to see what happens. So we know it's detecting the changes, but when I revert it to what I know is the original value, hey, good morning, Lane. When I revert the field to what I know is its original value, I want those buttons that just lit up, dang nabbit. So reset and save, disabled currently. When I change one of the fields, we're good. Hey, Jivat, we are working on something called the DM's Familiar. It's a product that I've been building, and I've got a couple of private beta users who seem to be happy with it, and I'm getting ready to launch it and unleash it on the internet. But I want to get edit NPC capabilities in place. So you're running your D&D game, your players go into town, and they meet the blacksmith, and they're really chatty, and they want to know all about the blacksmith and have a conversation with them and get his name and all of that. And so they say, hey, dude, what's your name? And what does he look like? And you've planned out your villain, and you've planned out like the important non-player characters for your campaign, but you haven't planned out your blacksmiths and your shopkeepers. So you end up with a whole bunch of them named Bob. So I'm like, oh crap, I need a blacksmith. No, they're not retired. Half vampire, no. Dragonborn, yeah, okay. All right. So the blacksmith is a dragonborn. He's standing behind his forge, hammering away at his anvil. Hi, I'm Throck. What's your name? I am Karnath Drakon. And then you've got these idea seeds to run the rest of that RP session. And your players really like hanging out with Karnath in his forge. So you save him, and he's waiting for them the next time they come to town. And this is the first feature of the DM's Familiar that I've built. I am going to be doing the same kind of thing for Karnath's smithy, or Grimble's alchemy shop, or Leora Blackwood's tavern in the woods a mile out of town, where all kinds of, well, you're mostly safe when you go there, but it's, Leora's tavern is where the less scrupulous people in town would go for their more sophisticated needs, for instance. And I'm not trying to replace the DM's need to do any work, because designing the dungeon and writing the story and coming up with a really awesome evil dude and all of that stuff, like even rough design of the town and so on, that's a lot of fun for me as a dungeon master. But my players are constantly catching me off guard and asking about details that I considered weren't terribly important to the overall story arc, because I'm thinking about the big picture and world events in the campaign, and they're thinking about what their players are doing right now. And so this helps me give them the level of immersion that they're looking for. And it happens relatively quickly, as long as you've got solid internet connection and a subscription to the DM's Familiar, which is going to be for sale soon. But yeah, I plan on doing the venues where these commoner townsfolk live and work and play. And I've got some other things in mind. And of course, anything that uses cloud storage or uses Gen AI in the background to help flesh out those details, that's part of the paid subscription. The free version, you can basically hit this roll button until your heart's content and just get random stuff generated. You can see the 5e compatible stats are rolling up over here on the side automatically as you go. You can do basically anything that you see on this screen except for generate AI description until you're pleased with it. And of course, for these randomly generated things, let's just hide those options. Let's say you've got somebody that you like, or you've got, some basics. You can then hit edit. And I'm going to let free users save like up to 5 NPCs. And once you've saved them, you can then come back out to your viewer. And I've got a little bit of a defect on here. It doesn't always export correctly the first time. Sometimes I have to hit it twice. Yep. So sometimes it emits a blank, and then I have to just hit export a second time. I got to track that down before I make it live. But you can actually download basically stat blocks for the NPCs you generate as JPEGs. Once that feature is fixed and working correctly every time, I'm going to make that part of the free access. You don't have to have a paid account for that. So, yeah. Same thing with editing. And I think I'll probably let free users save up to 5 characters that they create. If you want more than that, you gotta pay the programmer. So what I'm focused on today is that edit feature, and I'm doing this mostly so that I can share how I develop software, and more recently how I work with a language model to get this software developed. And so I've run into a minor issue. My reset and save changes buttons are disabled when you first load the form, and then those wake up as soon as you change something. Now, I don't have any code behind these yet, so they don't do anything. But when I set it back to what it was before, I want these to go to sleep again. Now, maybe I'm just splitting hairs, and that's not really that important, but it is to me. But I've at least got the bits where they're behaving correctly on initial load. And I think I'm going to have to call that good enough. There's a simple description of what I'm building, and I believe boom. That's where you can go to the website to get a little bit more information about this thing. But I'm trying to do as much of the development on this in public as I possibly can. So we have, and I've been at this for almost an hour and a half now. It's time for me to wrap this session up. I'll be back this afternoon. So we're mostly in a good place. But it's time to end this live session. Can you please give me a brief recap of our progress and the decisions we've made over the past 80 or so minutes. And my viewers boop. I'm basically asking my buddy Claude to give me some show notes. And Claude and I are going to keep working on those grisly little details in between. She's still typing? She is. This is not a brief recap. But I don't have to read that out loud.
Session recap object editor form enhancement.
Because she'll do it for us.
Change detection implementation. Move change tracking to EditModel class. Created dictionary for original values to avoid reflection costs. Added event system for change notifications. Implemented proper cleanup with teardown method. UI improvements. Added responsive form layout. Implemented button state.
You get the point. That's just a fun little dirty trick I learned yesterday. So yeah, we got quite a bit accomplished this session. I'm going to clean up those stupid little detail-y things that are bugging me between now and the next time we get together. But when we do, I am going to work on the reset form logic. And if we get through that quickly, we're going to work on applying the changes made in the edit form to the actual model and get it saved back to the cloud. So until next time, please take care of yourselves. Thanks for joining me, and happy coding. Bye now.